Welcome to the Make Each Click Count podcast. This is your host, Andy Splichal, and we are happy to welcome this week's guest to discuss today's topic, which is talking analytics, why it is important. Today's guest is an experienced retail strategist with over 20 years of experience in product and marketing. She is the Chief Operating Officer at Suite Analytics, where they have a strong interest in merging data science and creativity to fuel brand growth. A big welcome to Joe Davis. Hi, Joe.
Hi, Andy. How are you doing?
I'm doing great. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you. Thanks for inviting me.
So analytics, it's in the news a whole bunch. It's on the forefront of everybody's mind, especially since the recent forced migration from Google Universal to GA4.
Yeah.
But, let's start. Why is having proper analytics so important for the success of your online business?
Well, in my opinion, I believe it's just absolutely fundamental to fuel the performance and the growth of your business. Essentially, you're looking to increase efficiency, improve your profit, and match some strategy to some fantastic creative ideas out there. For me, I'm quite a creative person in my history, but I need that intel, that analytics to make the right decisions and to know what to do next.
So what is the advantage of using Suite Analytics versus Google Analytics for GA4 as just a standalone to get your data?
Yeah, I'm really pleased you asked that. It's a comparison. It's kind of apples and pears, really. We're not trying to be GA4, and we do quite different things. We're essentially a customer data platform. So where GA4 are very, very focused on traffic and site metrics, we're taking first-party data directly from the platforms. So our data will always match the actual cash that was in the till. You took £1,000 last week, our platform will say £1,000, and that's what we're trying to explain. We tend to see kind of 5 to 10 difference in numbers in GA4 compared to what the companies actually took. So that's one of the first key differences. However, we do cross over slightly with tracking. So we have our own tracking technology that we will place on our clients' website. So we're tracking web visits and browser information to create some slightly robust and more informative attribution models. We can answer a lot of questions around, what we call them touch points. So what marketing has the customer been touched with before they made a decision to buy with a brand? But what makes us particularly different there is that we also incorporate offline marketing. So, for example, if someone was doing a brochure or a catalogue or a postcard or a draw drop or something like that, we would be able to put that information into Suite and know who's been sent something, regardless whether they're a customer or what we call a cold contact, the name's been bought. So when someone places an order, as part of that journey, we've also got the timestamp of when they were sent a brochure, for example. So it starts to give a lot more insight in terms of how your offline and your online marketing is performing together. And this is a channel we're seeing really grow in the UK at the moment, especially with the younger demographic than it has historically. So we add a lot more depth to those marketing decisions slightly than what GA4 does, but we don't tend to cover the actual insight metrics. So we work together quite well. We have an integration with GA4, so you can see that information, coming together, which we really want to do the best for our clients there.
So a couple of follow-up questions on there. One of the frustrations is forever, whether it was Universal or GA4, was that numbers didn't match exactly.
Yeah.
It was always, I would, tell my clients as an agency, they're not really meant to match exact, and I'll never match exact. It's more of just to kind of, get a broader kind of sense of how all the marketing channels are doing. Yeah. And you're getting these to match exact based on, you said, first-party cookies. Now,
first-party data, yeah.
First-party data.
Yeah.
Now, how is that with all the new privacy laws going in? How is that affected? People,
well, the clients own their first party data. So when a customer places an order, the brand owns, has that data. Of course, they have to act with integrity and abide by the GDPR rules. But we know whether that we've got data against that customer or not. So if they haven't been able to track because they've decided to block their cookies, then there's no tracking data. But we still have that order within our platform, as a GA just wouldn't have it at all. It just wouldn't exist. That's where you see that difference. But you'd see that order, you'd see that customer, you know all the other information about that order, such as what they bought, was it their first order, second order, 10th order, whether they use a discount code, are they paying for shipping or not. We've still got all the information, but we would know that order's not been trackable in terms of web visits and marketing touch points.
And the other question I had is, you had mentioned, that the pounds match up to what's in the till, and so obviously you were in the UK, but your stuff is, of course, it's compatible with US companies.
Yes, sorry, I'm saying pounds because I'm English, but typically English. But yes, any currency we deal with multi-currencies across the globe.
Okay, great. Just didn't want to have anybody tune out and not listen to.
No, dollars, euros, whatever you want. We'll match back to your actual takings. Yeah.
So, what are some examples of some important insights that analytics could provide, and specifically Suite Analytics could provide, that would have an immediate impact on your business?
Well, when we're collecting the data, we're creating a very powerful single customer view. So for one particular customer, we know lots of information about them. So when they first placed an order, when they last placed an order, what their lifetime value is, what kind of products they're buying. And from that data, we create what's a very powerful growth modeling tool. So this is where we tend to start with clients. And I feel that we feel is absolutely fundamental to growing your business, is to understand, how is my current database performing? So say, you're looking for a 20, 30, 40% growth increase year on year. You need to know how your current database is performing and what you expect to gain from that database in terms of revenue. And then we're looking at filling the gap with acquisition. So understanding how many new customers you need to acquire to achieve your 50% growth, for example. And that really changes by business. I mean, if you're, say, a very remedies business that's very heavily reliant on subscription, you're less of a need of new customers. And if you're, say, a furniture company, for example, where you don't get great retention rates because the nature of the product, then you're very reliant on customer acquisition. But understanding those metrics for your business is really, really important. And I tend to find that's quite a light bulb moment with most clients that I work with. And then once we've worked with, from all those understandings of how your customers are behaving and what you would expect to get from new customers as well, based on those learnings, and knowing how many new customers you need to acquire, then it's really about how much do you need to spend. So what's your cost of acquisition? And it's not always what have you been spending, but what should you be spending? So part of the analytics is what we call a margin calculator. We go through the key metrics of cost and what the ROAS should be on a first-time order, and very much working on blended, which I really believe is right. So that it starts to create a really good growth strategy in terms of what you should be spending to acquire those customers. We also, because of that single customer view and understanding how customers repeat, we've got some quite really robust lifetime value metrics. And you can break that down by cohorts as well. So there's obviously lots of different ways to acquire customers. So if you're acquiring them through Facebook, for example, through sale, so do markdowns, you might see a much lesser growth over time than if you're acquiring them through organic search, for example. But you'd be able to know that through the analytics and break it down in that way. And then also, what's very key then is the relationship to products. So you start to understand, okay, what products are best for me to acquire customers? What's the best product for me to talk about the customer next in terms of follow-up? And how do I personalize those messages to get my best return on effort, if you like, for my CRM marketing? And then we talked a little bit earlier about the touch points that we collect and be able to have really good attribution models. So things like, especially when you're doing online and offline marketing, if you're doing something offline, you wouldn't see any of that in most data-driven attribution models. It's predominantly the online activity that you're measuring your performance against. But
so how is that data getting into Suite Analytics, the offline marketing?
So we upload it. It's a really quick wizard. You upload the mailing files. So if you're mailing 100,000 people, within less than a minute, you've told Suite who those 100,000 people are. And then that.
And
that
so if they come to order, if they come to order, instead of it showing direct for the marketing channel, it shows the postcard.
Well, it creates a touch point, because essentially, especially if it's an online brand only, they still have to come to the website. So if perhaps it's showing, okay, we can see if they place an order, and we can look back and see, okay, all the different marketing touch points. This is very instant, by the way. This happens in pretty much instant time. You can see, okay, on the 1st of July, I sent that person a catalogue, and they placed an order on the 10th of July, and they click through from an email. But that singular view is not particularly helpful. But through the attribution models, you can see that relationship, and then you know that direct mail and emails generated this much cash for me versus direct mail versus a paid brand campaigns, which you can. So it's safe to assume, but that's what's happened, and you can probably make the conclusion the catalogue's driven that web search. Of course, attribution is never 100%, but you've got the data to make some conclusions and to persevere with your test and learn processes.
Well, I mean, that's a mouthful. Where, I guess, just thinking about it, what's the learning curve like using your program, Suite Analytics, and where does a business even start?
Well, it's quick because we have all the data within 24 hours. So some of those insights, your lifetime value, cost per acquisition, etc., is very quick. You're learning that within 24 hours generally. The longer learning curve is around the test and learn, because we have quite strong segmentation tools where you can segment your data and communicate that instantly back to your third-party platforms such as Facebook, Google Analytics, email platforms, Klaviyo, MailChimp, etc. You can communicate back to them, because we don't see ourselves in competition with any of those platforms. We're here to help clients enhance them. And by creating segments within our platform, you can then measure the performance of those segments in the same way. So that's the slightly longer learning curve where you're testing and learning, start to understand what's working and how to change some of your strategies. But the instant learning curve is having all those analytics within 24 hours.
And
what kind
of training do you offer, like a new client? Or, I mean, I guess that's what I'm.
Yeah.
It seems like it could be overwhelming for somebody coming in to try to figure out the data and all that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we do different levels of packages to manage that overwhelm, depending on where the brand is and the experience within the teams. But we have a client services team which are on hand, and we offer complimentary calls every month to our members. They're completely free. We have live chat within our system as well, where somebody's always at the other end to answer any questions. But we also run live training sessions. So we do recordings, but we tend to do everything live. So you can book on to a particular time, and you have a live person doing that training who can talk you through and answer your questions. But we do quite a robust free trial process as well. So part of that free trial process is getting people up to speed and understanding how to use the platform. But you're right, Andy, there's a lot of information there, and that's probably one of our biggest barriers, I think, of brand owners, of knowing where to start. So quite often it's talking to those, and I have a call personally for every single person that signs up for a free trial, to just understand what the problems they're facing, and direct them to the correct part of the analytics to help them, because it's very rare that everybody needs everything. So it's kind of understanding people's personal needs. Yeah.
And I mean, besides analytics being very topical with the migration to GA4, AI, everybody's talking about. And have you guys been able to incorporate AI into Suite Analytics?
Great question. It's one of my favorite subjects right now. We're working on it, is the honest answer, and we're going to call it SI, so Suite Intelligence. So it's going to be our version. And in order for that to work, I think it's, AI is backed by data. You have to have great data to have good artificial intelligence. One doesn't work without the other. So we have a huge amount of data that can really help the clients. But we're working a little bit harder at the moment on understanding clients' goals. So we do a growth modelling and quite a broad goals piece. We're breaking that down into more information and more detailed metrics in terms of goals at the moment. And we'll be using that information to know whether a client, this is all through the artificial intelligence, to know whether that client is achieving their goals. And if they're not, it sends them to particular parts of the dashboard to give them further insights and actionable points on the areas that they need to increase their performance on. Like I said, not every single piece of the dashboard is going to be relevant to everybody, but if you're, for example, have a certain plan or a particular average order value you need to achieve next month, and you're lagging behind, we'll pick that up for the artificial intelligence, about to point you to the areas in which you can look into that in more detail, but also what to do next.
One of my favorite questions I always like to ask is, what are some of the trends that you're thinking are going to come in e-commerce? And you probably have more insight to that than most, given you're looking at numbers and you're dealing with e-commerce companies. But I guess the question, so let's say you had a crystal ball. What do you think the future holds for e-commerce over the next 12 to 18 months?
I think data is huge, but especially first party data. And I think in 18 months it's going to be the norm that a brand understands their first party data, who their customers are and what they're doing. And there was a very bold statement in the Sunday Times here recently that fail to know your data, be prepared to fail. It's becoming huge. So I think that's going to become more the norm. I think artificial intelligence is growing at a phenomenal rate. I mean, there's two different types of artificial intelligence, which is generative and non-generative. And I think the non-generative is there's a lot out there already and probably a lot more to happen. But the generative AI, I think, is where it's going to get interesting, where especially things like creative advertising, and it can start to generate the right adverts, the right images, or what it thinks is the right images to particular groups of people, is going to be quite interesting. The other, and it's probably an unpopular opinion maybe, but I think Amazon is growing at a phenomenal rate. It's going to be absolutely huge in 18 months and very, very dominant within the industry, and it's really creating a new way of shopping and a new way of advertising, which I think that's progressing quite quickly, and we see quite a difference there in the next 18 months.
Now, your analytics, speaking of Amazon, is just working on merchant's own website. I mean, there's nothing, I mean, you're not able to get that information from Amazon, right?
Well, you can if the client is fulfilling the orders themselves. So it's fulfilled by merchant. And
okay. So
if
they're sending out postcards, directing them to Amazon, then you can get that information if they're doing FBM.
Yes, so if the client's receiving the orders and fulfilling it from their own distribution centres, then they have all of the customer information apart from the email address, but you have enough information to be able to analyse that data. I believe you're not allowed to market to them, but you are understanding, you know, have I moved people from my website to Amazon and vice versa? So you understand that data. But most do FBA, so fulfilled by Amazon. So there is a slight black hole there in terms of data, but it's a big challenge with any marketplaces, you know, eBay, Etsy. I'm sure you've got some big ones in the US as well that your clients are using. It does create quite a black hole. Same for wholesale as well. When you start selling to third parties, you're losing the visibility of your customer data. So it's something to always consider when you're starting to push your reach out in that way.
Now let's talk more about you and how you got started there. Have there been any business books that you could attribute to your success as an entrepreneur?
I read an awful lot, actually. I'm a big reader, and I'd probably attribute them more to mindfulness type books. So I'm a huge fan of Robin Sharma. The Everyday Hero Manifesto has been a complete life-changing book for me in the last couple of years. Also Jay Shetty, Think Like a Monk. Anything that's related to ego, I absolutely love to read, and I think can be a huge barrier in people's progress. I think understanding your ego is really, really important for an entrepreneur. Autobiographies, some of my heroes, absolutely love reading their stories. But I probably, in terms of the more business side of things, I prefer subscriptions. So I've got some favourites such as Blend Commerce and a fab lady over here called Chloe Thomas. I read the kind of bi-weekly, a couple of times a week updates. I find those really informative and help me keep up to speed of what's happening.
Oh, interesting. There. I was a guest on her podcast a few months ago.
Oh, me too.
Okay.
That's great. No, Chloe's fantastic. Yeah, I think she brings some great insights to the marketing world.
Now, let's talk a little bit more about Suite Analytics. Do you have a favorite success story of one of your clients that you could share?
Yeah, I mean, we have lots, which I'm really pleased to say, but there's probably one that's standing out when I saw that question, and it's a fashion retailer that I've been working with since 2019, and I don't know, you may have seen a similar thing from your end, but when COVID hits, an awful lot of brands pulled back on marketing and spend and got quite scared, wanted to really protect profit. But this particular brand held their nerve, and through the growth modelling exercise that we'd done with them, it showed very clearly if they was going to pull back on the marketing, the acquisition would have really dropped, and what the impact would have been in 2 and 3 years' time when you had less people to retain, especially as a very strong retention business. But they held their nerve and they pushed forward, and they achieved some amazingly low cost per acquisitions, as a lot of people did in that time. And 4 years later, they're at 15 times growth what they were in 2019. Yeah, absolutely phenomenal performance, and I really do put it down to holding their nerve during that time. And just and just monitoring it. It wasn't just spending. They were using analytics. They were measuring their performance, ensuring that the marketing was doing reach and bringing in new customers, and it's really paid off for them.
And on the flip side, what are some of the challenges you struggle with in getting results for clients?
Yeah, no, great question. I think the certain scenarios are very, very difficult to work with. Low AOV and low margin with high cost per acquisition cost is very, very difficult. And when I say a high acquisition cost, it may not be high as a number, but high as the percentage of the AOV can make things very, very difficult. And sometimes it gets quite hard to find opportunities and maneuvers to keep growing a business profitably when we're dealing with those metrics. They're probably our least favorite to work with. Yeah, it's very difficult.
And how does the fee structure work with Suite Analytics?
Yeah, great question. So we start from a free model, which is a few areas of the dashboard, and then it grows roughly around £500 per 5 million of turnover per year to be a member. But then we do offer additional services on top for consultancy and some actual doing marketing services as well. So the package can be quite tailored, but we're broadly speaking £500 per 5 million.
And how does that? What's the exchange rate for US dollars?
It's about 1.3. Yeah. So I think we're looking about $700 for 700 million turnover in dollars.
$700 per 7 million traffic?
No, revenue. So we'll do a rolling 12 months revenue. Yeah. But on our website, sweetanalytics.com, which I know you're coming to, we have all our pricing information on the website.
Okay. And who is the perfect listener? If they're out there listening to this episode, they could benefit by taking a free trial to start to Suite Analytics.
Yeah, so small to medium sized businesses. So we start with people that are just about to start trading, want to have all their data ducks in a row before they start trading. Up to around 20 million is our most common areas that we work with, where we feel we can make a big difference by offering our solution.
And what would you tell them to why they need Suite Analytics to help grow their business?
But I fundamentally believe you need the intel to understand what's happening. Everything I've probably just talked about for the last 20 minutes, absolutely fundamental to make the right decisions to grow your business. I think there's been such a change in the last 20 years. When we start very much trading in bricks and mortar 20 years ago, we didn't have a lot of data. We didn't have the intel we do now. There's an awful lot of information available, but it can get quite overwhelming. So having a data system like Suite that can turn all that data into really easy, understandable and actionable insights, it is really, really key for growth, in my opinion.
And is that the advantage over using just Google Analytics GA4 as a standalone? Is it's going to make it more understandable for the business owner?
Yeah, 100% it's more understandable, but it adds a whole new layer about understanding your customer performance, not just your site metrics, and being able to do something with that data.
All right. Well, this has been great. Thanks for joining us. Is there anything else you'd like to add before we wrap it up today?
No, just something I probably just forgot to say. We generally work with B2C companies, so direct to consumer, and we predominantly work with the lifestyle sectors, but we can do anything that's B2C. And yeah, we do a free trial for 2 weeks. I'd love to hear from anybody who wants to discuss an opportunity of working with us, and just go to sweetanalytics.com and click book demo, and more than happy to have a conversation with anybody.
Well, this has been great. Thanks for joining us today, Joe.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for having me.
For listeners, remember, if you like this episode, please go to Apple Podcasts and leave us an honest review. And if you're looking for more information on Suite Analytics or connecting with Joe, you'll find the links in the show notes below. In addition, if you're looking for more information on growing your business, check out our podcast resource center available at podcast.makeeachclickcount.com. We have categorized all of our different past guests by show topic and included each of their contact information in case you would like more information on any of the episodes that I've had, any of the guests in previous episodes. Well, that's it for today. Remember to stay safe, keep healthy, and happy marketing, and I'll talk to you in the next episode.